Call to order, Bedford Township Planning Commission regular meeting, October 24th, 2018. Please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Steffen, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Frederick?
Present.
Mr. Zybeck?
Present.
Mr. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Garbrick?
Here.
Steffen is present. Mr. Fritz?
Here.
Chairman Anger?
Here. Thank you, Mr. Steffen. If there are no changes to the agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None. Motion passed. Next, if there are no changes to the minutes of the September 26, 2018 meeting, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of September 26, 2018 as published and waive the reading thereof.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None. Motion passed. Next on the agenda is public comment. This is for anyone from the public that would like to speak about something that is not on part of item 7B, the public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak that's not part of 7B here? If not, then we will move on to new business. First is a request for a recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals on a site layout and temporary use for a 2-day Blizzard Fest in an R3 single-family residential zoning district on land described as 5802-014-04800, otherwise known as 9144 Lewis Avenue, Temperance, Michigan. Karen, can you give us some background?
Yes. This request is from St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church on behalf of the Community Foundation of Monroe County, with Tasha L. Harris serving as spokesperson for the Bedford Blizzard Fest Committee event. The request for consideration is to hold a 2-day event to be held on the church property on Saturday and Sunday, December 14th and 15th, 2018, with festival hours beginning at 5 p.m. Until 9 p.m. The Planning Commission will not be making a decision on this request, as the request for the temporary use permit is required to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. A public hearing will be held at the BZA meeting, and all property owners within 300 feet of the perimeter of the subject property will be notified of the public hearing and the proposed use. Section 422.04 of the Bedford Township Zoning Ordinance states the Board of Zoning Appeals shall seek the review and recommendation of the Planning Commission prior to the taking of any action. Therefore, action on this request will be in the form of a recommendation to the BZA. It should be noted this item has been scheduled for consideration at the November 5, 2018 BZA meeting. As indicated in the submitted letter from the Blizzard Fest Committee, there will be no on-site parking due to the entire use of the parking lot for the event. The applicant noted at that time that Lewis Avenue would be closed to the area. They now state that there is no closure of Lewis Avenue. That should be clarified this evening. The fire department has been provided and is reviewing the submitted plot plan to ensure it meets all fire codes. We have spoken to the fire department, as has the applicant, and they will continue to review, and they also would like to visit the site on the day of the meeting to confirm locations of fire pits and make sure that it meets all the requirements of the fire code, but they will have that information available to the BZA prior to that meeting. It is indicated there will be Christmas music resonating throughout the festival, and the special occasion permit has been submitted and approved by the township supervisor. The submitted plot plan identifies the area provided for an ice skating rink, Santa tent with pictures, vendor location having no more than 5 vendors, a live nativity scene, and 2 or 3 fire pit locations. The site plan states there will be horse-drawn carriage rides provided by Duke's Farm. Also, it is stated the church will be open, as upstairs will be the church choir and Christmas movies playing, and downstairs Christmas crafts for children will be provided. The applicant has supplied a flyer and postcards that are being utilized for advertising for the festival and is encouraging a Battle of the Lights contest throughout the township. Therefore, the following should be verified. We have received the notarized documentation from the Community Foundation of Monroe County and St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church, so that is no longer a requirement. We do have that available to us. The location of music and amplified music, again, the special occasion permit has been approved. We just want to verify those locations. If any designated location is being provided for parking, we did receive a letter from Lake Erie Transit that they will be picking up at the Northwest Christian Church. We don't have a letter at this time from the church, but we do have the letter from Lake Erie Transit that they are working on finalizing that piece of information. The fire department special events application approval to ensure it meets all fire codes. Again, they're reviewing that now. And to confirm that the Monroe County Road Commission, that the closure is not planned for Lewis Avenue. So those are the things that we must verify.
Thank you, Karen. Is there a representative or the applicant that would like to come to the podium and add anything? If you could just make sure you state your name and address into the mic. Thank you.
Tasha Harris, 3405 Concia Road.
Thank you.
Yes. We have one of our committeemen that jotted down some extra notes here to provide.
Hi, I'm Jewel Patton, 1612 Hunt Cliff. First of all, I just want to correct something that Karen said. This is the 14th and 15th, but that's on a Friday and Saturday, not Saturday and Sunday, from 5 to 9. She's pretty well covered everything that we were going to say, and we do have the Lake Erie shuttle that's going to take people from that church. And one of the entrances to the church will be left open for emergency vehicles. Our vendors, and we have Santa and all that, will actually, there won't be traffic that can go in the parking lot. But on the other side, on the south side of the church, that will be left open for emergency vehicles. Should the need arise, hopefully it's not going to. We have our sponsors all lined up. Everything's ready to go. We just need your permission to have this. Is there any questions you have for us?
Thank you, possibly.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Zybeck?
Can I ask one?
Yes, just speak into the mic, please.
Sure. I'm assuming that Lake Erie Transit will be transporting people who will be parking at the other church, correct?
Correct.
Where's the other church?
It's on Temperance Road. It is the Northwest Christian Church on Temperance Road.
Is that across from the old Temperance Elementary?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
I know which one it is
Yes,
now. All right.
yes. And the banks downtown and in Temperance have agreed to let us park there, so there'll be on-street parking, just no parking in the parking lot.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Frederick?
Just one little nit.
Okay.
You've chosen to work with the Monroe County Community Foundation.
Correct.
Why didn't you work with the Bedford Foundation? We have a wonderful foundation here.
I understand that now. I have been connected with the foundation.
It's been around for 20 years.
Okay, but I didn't know that at the time that we started
Well,
this.
okay, I've registered my complaint.
Okay, I worked with.
I was one of the original board members, and that's why I'm a little concerned that we didn't think about.
Okay, I have worked with the Monroe Foundation through Miss Monroe. That's
I
why.
already registered my nit.
Okay, I'm sorry you asked me a question. I'm just trying to answer.
It's already done.
Mr. Stefan?
Ms. Patton, I see you have a letter from the Sheriff's Office. They are aware of the event.
Correct.
Any further communication with you, how they're going to be involved, directing traffic, so on and so forth?
When I had talked to him, he said if we needed 2 deputies up there, they could supply the 2 deputies.
Just verbal agreement then at this
Right,
point?
right.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I'll take a stab at. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Zoning Appeals the approval of the plan for the Blizzard Fest, subject to identifying on the site plan the location of the music, parking locations ID'd, and approval of the Bedford Township Fire Department.
Would you like to address the road commission not closing Lewis Avenue?
Not the Lewis Avenue will not be closed per the Monroe County Road Commission.
Support?
We have a motion and support. Can you take the roll, Mr. Steffen?
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Stefan votes yes. Mr. Frederick?
Notwithstanding my nit, yes.
Mr. Sybeck?
Yes.
Mr. Garverick?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Chairman Anger?
Yes. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next one's going to be just as easy.
Turn that.
Next on the agenda, we have an open to the public hearing regarding the Edward Rendle request for a rezoning of a portion of parcel number 5802-032-05560 from R2A Single Family Residential to C3 General Commercial, located east of SECOR Road, otherwise known as 3199 West Stearns Road, Lambertville, Michigan. I'd like to just go through something that I wrote up the other day. I know this is a topic that is one that can bring out strong emotions, and I welcome the public to express their passions, but it needs to be done in a constructive and respectful manner. Outbursts will not be allowed and may result in being asked to leave the meeting. I would first like to go over the rules of the public hearing. The Planning Commission would like to make it clear that it is bound by rules and laws, and that these are the determinants when weighing the case. In order to conduct the hearing within a reasonable time and to keep the subject at hand, you are asked to observe the following rules. After the staff presentation, the applicant will state his case fully and furnish the Planning Commission with pertinent information concerning the property. Each person making a statement will be asked to state their name and address in the microphone clearly. Please refrain from repeating what has been said before you, and please do not involve personalities. This means do not make derogatory remarks regarding other people's comments and direct your comments to the chairperson. Be as factual as possible. The Planning Commission reserves the right to question any speaker. All statements or questions must be directed to the chairperson, which is me. Unless the time is extended by the chairperson, a person making a public statement in his or her own individual capacity and not as a representative or spokesperson for an organization or group shall have 5 minutes to make the public statement. We do have a timer here. It will be green for was it green, like 5
4 minutes.
4 minutes, yes, 4 minutes, and then 1 minute of yellow, and then it'll buzz when the timer is done. A person making a public statement as a representative or spokesperson for an organization or group shall have 10 minutes to make the public statement. Staff and/or consultants are asked to present their reports and answer any questions of the Planning Commission. Individuals wishing to speak to the subject of the hearing are recognized by the chairperson. If there are numerous people in the audience who would like to participate on the issue, and it is known that all represent the same opinion, it is advised that the spokesperson be selected to speak for the entire group. The hearing body must permit comments from all interested or affected individuals and organizations, and it should be stressed that consideration will be given to all comments or suggestions made. Irrelevant of the off the subject comments should be ruled out of order. The chairperson may, within reasonable limits and upon request, allow cross-examination or rebuttal. All comments should be addressed to the subject of the hearing through the chairperson and not directed to any individuals. The hearing body, the audience, should refrain from debating or arguing with persons commenting. The function of the hearing is to gather facts, not to carry on an adversary relationship. The chairperson should, upon the motion, announce the close of the public portion of the hearing or announce the continuation of the public hearing to another specified time and place if the hour is late or the additional pertinent information must be obtained. The commission then deliberates on the matter. All deliberations must be conducted in an open public meeting. After the vote, please be mindful that we are still conducting a meeting and take any conversation out of the room. Now let's have a great meeting, and I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Support. I have motion and support. Mr. Steffen, can you take the roll?
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Steffen votes yes. Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mr. Zybeck.
Aye.
Mr. Garvert.
Yes.
Mr. Fritz.
Yes.
Chairman Anger.
Yes. Motion carried. Public hearing is open. Karen, can you please give us some background?
Yes, again, the owner of the property is Edward Rendle. The applicant is John Bates Jr. and Jess Saylor. The current zoning is C3 General Business District and R2A One Family Residential District. The requested zoning for a portion of the parcel is C3 General Commercial. The master plan designates this area as mixed use. The existing parcel consists of approximately 23.08 acres with 1,171.63 feet of frontage on Stearns Road and 66 feet of frontage on SECOR Road. The subject site is currently split zone with approximately 4.1 acres of the 23.08 acres being C3 zoned. The site is served by municipal water and sanitary sewer, and the surrounding zonings are to the north, C2 Shopping Center Business, R2A One Family Residential, to the west, C3 General Business, south, C1 Local Business, PUD Planned Unit Development, and R2A One Family Residential. The R2A One Family Residential does not abut the proposed rezoning area. East, R2A One Family Residential, which also does not abut the proposed rezoning area. The master plan adopted on October 28, 2015 designates this area as mixed use and further describes the intent of to promote mixed uses and flexible redevelopment in areas outside of the village center having a mix of residential, office, and lower intensity commercial uses. The history, the zoning ordinance, including the zoning map adopted on May 5, 1977, identified the subject parcel as split zoned at that time. Over the years, portions of the subject parcel was split from the parent parcel to create separate parcels along SECOR Road, with the last division taking place to construct the car wash in 2001, leaving a total of 66 feet of frontage on SECOR Road. On October 9, 2018, the applicant went before the Board of Zoning Appeals and was granted a 34-foot frontage variance to allow the existing 66 feet of frontage on SECOR Road, where 100 feet of frontage is required, to serve as frontage to create a separate parcel. The Board of Zoning Appeals made the variance subject to a granted rezoning of the property. The request is to rezone approximately 6.41 acres from R2A One Family Residential to C3 General Business, which is proposed to be combined with the existing 4.1 C3 zoned acres to increase the acreage of C3 zone property from 4.1 acres to 10.51 acres. The balance of the parcel will remain R2A One Family Residential zoned and is not being considered for any zoning amendment with this request. The site contains an existing home and accessory structures, and when consulting with James S. Jacobs Architects, it was indicated all structures will be located within the proposed commercial area. Should the property be rezoned to commercial, all structures within the commercially zoned portion of the parcel would be required to be utilized for commercial purposes or demolished. As well, no existing structures may be located within the remaining residentially zoned area of the parcel as per section 400.1903 accessory buildings. No accessory structures within any zoning district may be placed on a vacant lot or parcel. It should be noted that with any proposed land division, all structures must meet the setback requirements in accordance with section 400.1800, the Schedule of Regulations. Again, the above mentioned will become relevant in the event of a rezoning and the required land division to eliminate the split zoning. The Planning Department requested a review of the rezoning request. Lucy Fortin from the Manikin Smith Group and planner for Bedford Township prepared an overall review of the subject area and issued a recommendation that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Township Board to approve the rezoning request. It should be noted that all uses within the C2 and C1 zoning districts are also permitted within the C3 zoning district if the conditions and/or stipulations of the ordinance requirements can be obtained. As well, today we received 2 emails of support for this request, 1 email of opposition, and we also did receive, and these are in front of you that were placed this evening, we received a letter from the Downtown Development Authority expressing support for this request. I would like to, just for the benefit, go over the conclusion from the planner. I'm not going to read the entire report. It's 8 pages long. I'm just going to read the conclusion. We suggest the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Township Board to approve the rezoning request for a 6.5-acre piece of land, more or less, located on parcel number 5802-032-05560 from R2A one-family residential district to C3 general business based on the following key reasons. The subject portion is adjacent to existing C3 zone frontage along SECOR and Stearns Roads. It is consistent with the Township Master Plan goals and policy. It follows the Master Plan future land use designation for mixed uses. It logically locates commercial land uses in the core business district of the Township. It is supported by adequate utility infrastructure. While development of the property will have some environmental impacts, similar impacts would result from any land development, including residential. A transition between the commercial area and the existing single-family homes to the east and south of the property is preserved, and screening between the commercial and the residential uses is required and will alleviate some of the possible negative impacts of potential commercial uses.
Thank you, Karen.
I think that's it.
Is there a representative? Oh, here. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Jim Jacobs with Jacobs Architects at 25 Washington Street in Monroe. Here tonight to present our client's vision and request for rezoning. Want to start, what's being handed out to you is a proposed vision for the site. It's not a site plan for consideration this evening. We understand that we're here for a rezoning request, but I think it's important with some of the questions that you understand graphically what the intent of the owner is as we progress through the process here. So while we're not here tonight to consider the plans for redevelopment, I feel that it's important, I kind of covered that, I guess. Apologize, I wrote some thoughts down so I didn't skip over some things.
I can understand that.
But the to better understand the logic that we're using for the request tonight, we want to share the vision, which we expect will continue to change as this board, the county and state agencies, township consultants, and the owner's development needs will continue to define and redefine the plan. We understand this plan is not up for approval or discussion, but is merely being offered to convey the owner's intended vision. Oops, she flipped it over already. Basically, can you flip that back over? I'm going to need it to explain some things. The positioning of the commercial, we're trying to transition from the residential in the east and south to the commercial development to the west and north of the site. So we've chose to propose the commercial development, which we're asking for some rezoning for this evening, in that corner that abuts the other commercial along Stearns and SECOR. We have extended the commercial district down. The DDA district encompasses a portion of the site up in that corner, and then we're extending a little past that with, which I'll get into some specific dimensions here shortly, but that would be the extent of the commercial. Then we transition with some open space, potentially some multifamily residential, and then abutting the adjacent residential uses, all single-family homes is what the vision of our client is. We have some features that Some are required and some are just some suggestions of what the owner would like to see there. Sidewalks connecting the entire site and the adjacent all the way up to across the property on both Stearns and SECOR, so that we can have some walkability to the downtown area. And then again, within the site, also having sidewalks that connect the residential to the commercial on-site. We propose some landscape buffers. Again, some will be required by the ordinances as we develop, and some that are being proposed just because of the way the owner would like to see the site developed for his own thoughts. The open space that we're proposing will be used for two purposes. One, for some community activity space, and the other to house the detention required for the site, for both the residential aspects and the commercial. And then to try to preserve as many of the existing landscape features and mature trees and other things that we can. That said, we are proposing, or will be proposing in future plans, some modification of that. So, that said, now we can flip those over. The purpose that we're here for tonight is our presence before you is for the request for rezoning of 6.41 acres, more or less, of the parent parcel, totaling approximately 22.99 acres, from R2A to C3 commercial. As a reminder, 2 to 3 years ago, this board, the public, and the township board updated their master plan and adopted it with public input and meetings. It's my impression and understanding that the mixed-use zoning designation, encouraging commercial and residential development on this site was anticipated and supported by all involved. The borrowed view of our site for the surrounding developments, which were once forested and farmlands themselves and are now densely populated, did not express or desire to preserve the plan for this area to be a public park or agricultural land use. Our recreation area, and by its adoption, it was reaffirmed that the highest and best use for this site was as a mixed-use development. As the township doesn't have a specific mixed-use ordinance zoning designation, we are proposing a plan to provide a vehicle for our client and the township to achieve the mixed-use concept by placing the commercial aspects of the development along the commercially influenced corridors of SECOR and Stearns, then transitioning internally and easterly with residentially influenced and planned areas of open space for single-family residents, with the possibility or suggestion of multifamily as a buffer between the commercial and single-family areas. To accomplish this, we are proposing to extend the Stearns Road commercial frontage by 605.14 feet easterly to a depth of 367 feet. So that would be, oops, not working. There's a line that shows the existing, and I think you have that on the drawing that you have before you, that shows the existing commercial zone. And then from that line to the east is the 605 feet, and then the depth going down is 367 feet. And then along the SECOR road frontage, we would propose extending the lot 135.17 feet easterly and 419.75 feet northerly, connecting the L shape there. Upon rezoning, the commercial area would be split into separate parcels. 3 separate parcels is what we're proposing to comply with the current township standards of non-split zoning on parcels. And that's what we would propose to you this evening. I think we've read through the recommendations of the planner and staff and feel that they've outlined additional detail that we feel covers the rest of the pertinent information regarding the request.
Thank you very much. I will now open the floor to the public. If there's anyone that would like to speak, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Fate. I live at 7257 Hidden Valley Drive. I wrote down, I was at the meeting 2 weeks ago, and I'm not here to cause dissension between anyone, but I am concerned about the status of Stearns Road. That is an unimproved two-lane road that has heavy traffic now. I'd like to know, what do you plan to do if this is carried through to commercial to improve that traffic flow so the constituents can get out of their driveways and their subdivisions? So that's my question. And also, I believe this gentleman before me answered my question about the barriers. It would just be forestry, trees. There's no plans for a wall or anything between the residential and the commercial. Those are my questions. And of course, I'm very concerned about my property value going down because of the commercial zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Shelley Laurel. I live at 7293 Hidden Valley Drive in Lambertville. What I think most of us in my neighborhood are concerned about is the approach the development group is taking. I mean, we're worried about traffic, we're worried about safety, we're worried about crime, but that majority of the 23 acres behind us is zoned R2A, single-family homes. What's being requested is C3 zoning. And now all of us in Hidden Valley, unfortunately, understand all too well what's allowed under C3 zoning. Just a few of the things the township's own ordinance allows under C3 zoning. A bus station, and I realize it will only be 10 acres, but still, there's been no transparency in what will actually go there. You're voting on something that you don't even know what will go there. A bus station, a mortuary, a hotel, a motel, a drive-through restaurant, yes, even the dreaded Walmart. Again, I recognize right now it's only 10 acres. These are all considered to be principal permitted uses of land zone C3. Why that's especially concerning to residents is the township couldn't stop any of those things from being built. We don't know what's going there because all of these things fall within the principal permitted uses of C3. You would review the site plan, we understand, but you couldn't stop it if it meets the general business district requirements. It could be a big box store. Who knows what could go in there? We've already rejected as a township these kinds of development, but here we are again with a request for C3 at the most congested intersection of the township. If this plan really is for a food market, a restaurant, and some kind of hardware store like the rumors that are circulating, why didn't they just request C1 zoning? C1 zoning, as we understand, allows for all these type of developments. Grocery stores, hardware stores, restaurants. Why the more permissive and less restrictive C3 zoning? The next part of our concern is one the developer addressed, or the architect addressed a few minutes ago, and that's that the last part of the land would remain R2A, which at first glance seems like a great idea. But it also has mixed family housing units in there, about 18 rental units. That requires RM1 or RM2 zoning, but no one's requested that tonight. Why not? Why isn't this plan in its entirety being presented tonight? That means the developers will be back here with another request for rezoning. What will they ask for then? What kind of zoning for the last half of the property that our homes back up to? It seems like a better solution to us, one that protects residents and protects residents from some of the big box stores or some of the threats that we're all worried about, would be a PUD. Is there a reason a PUD can't be considered for this property? Does nobody answer questions, or you just?
This is public comment.
You don't answer questions? Okay, fine. The PUD seems like a good way to go. It protects the residents from a mortuary in their backyard while still allowing this land to be developed. You guys would review it, Reject it, approve it, ask for changes. That's what we're told a PUD is. Everybody wins that way. And finally, for the record, none of us in Hidden Valley, and I can speak for quite a few of my neighbors, lived under the illusion that the field would remain undeveloped land forever. But we did believe, because this is zoned residential, single-family homes, that residential homes would be built there, in our backyards. Not a mortuary, not a big box retailer. We shouldn't have to see our property values fall so developers can make money. Not fair to us. We don't want to end up like the house next to Taco Bell. A house that's a nice house, but it's unsellable. It's one of our biggest investments in life, our home. We shouldn't have to lose money so these developers can make money. We've all worked hard to buy and maintain our homes. No one wants to end up listening to someone shout their orders in a fast food restaurant drive-through all night long. There's a better way to do this. That's why I respectfully ask that you deny the C3 rezoning request. The almost unlimited building options C3 zoning would give developers is not in the best interest of the residents of Bedford Township.
Thank you.
Karen Sullivan, 7341 Hidden Valley. I just have a couple questions that I hope you'll pose when you go to discuss this. She mentioned the traffic. I don't believe there's been a road study that's been conducted to know about the area. How do we know the traffic on the roads and the electricity is okay, all of that in the area? Has the DNR been contacted about the wetland area and how that's going to be addressed? Many years ago, Hidden Valley residents had to pay for the pond at the back of Green Hills to be dredged because of the developing. Has that owner been contacted and found out if her pond will have to be looked into? The accident rate at the township at that corner is second and the highest in the township. Has that been taken into account by adding more in the area? What is the economic benefit that the township's going to receive? Is it enough to make this a viable option? And then at the last meeting, we heard a lot about the love of Bedford. Is there a written contract that only Bedford contractors will be involved? I hear Monroe, possibly Toledo. Is there a written contract that a percentage of Bedford residents will receive jobs? And is there a written contract saying that this rezoning and this plan is what they're saying it's going to be, because we have not heard what that will be. And I keep hearing the phrase, right now, right now. Right now, there's a driveway on SECOR Road, but if you look at the plan, they kept saying, right now, there's only one driveway. Right now might be changing down the road. So we would like some transparency in the area. So if you cannot answer that, any of those questions, I would hope that you would find the answers before you consider rezoning.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Young, 7136 Hidden Valley Drive. All right, I don't know how many of you remember what Stearns and SECOR was like when it had just 2 lanes into that intersection. But it was just atrocious intersection. Nobody liked going through that intersection at all. And then once they developed it into a 5-lane interchange, the whole situation changed. It became a much nicer neighborhood, much nicer area. And also then the businesses came into the area. Kroger's built, all that. And it was all planned out ahead of time. We understood what the roads were. We understood that what we were going to benefit by having all this work go on. And that's what I asked the board to consider, is that we understand what we were going to do to the roads to help this situation, to make it much more attractive for the customers coming into the C3 property, as well as the residents being able to get in and out of their driveways, as well as subdivisions, as well as emergency vehicles being able to travel down Stearns Road. In the wintertime, Stearns Road becomes very clogged with snow and very slick, and it's very hard to pull off when an ambulance goes through. So in the current conditions that we have now. So all I do is ask the board to consider that we have a plan for the roads before we move forward with this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to
Hi, Judy Frankowski, 1115 Ashland Drive. I'm also president of Bedford Watch. This battle is reminiscent of what we did at Lewis and Stearns. But as always, it comes down to what is best for our community. To me, convenience is not the priority, nor is making money off someone else's loss. Priority is securing the value of our homes. Priority is keeping us safe. If you approve this rezoning, you are endangering all of us who drive and live here. The increased traffic is unacceptable and actually is just a scary thought. And again, has a traffic study been done? And as you know, if you do rezone, it could be anything. Is a big box store really off the table? Who knows? Again, this is not in my backyard this time, but it is in Bedford Township, my community, a community of neighbors and friends who look out for each other. Please say no to this rezoning. And as buffers go, sometimes those are empty promises. And also, Jason Shepard, our state representative, is the realtor for this property. This is a mid-election year. What say he? How does he feel about this? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tim Oswald, 6655 Greenbrier, Temperance, Michigan. When it comes to the splitting of the property, like the lady just mentioned, the Whitman property, they wanted to rezone that C3 to put a Walmart in there. The Planning Commission made them go C3, C1, multifamily to protect the residential people back there and the condos next. This, we're going from C3 right to R2A. Pretty harsh. Where is the transition from the C3, which is the biggest, because after C3 comes I-1. There's no transition there from C3 to those residential people, like PBO or multifamily, something other than C3 right to R. The other thing is I thought on a commercial piece of property, when you drained it, the one guy said something about draining it into that pond. I might be wrong. I don't know. You guys would know. I don't think you can take property and drain it into a common pond like that off a piece of commercial. I think it has to drain into an approved storm sewer. I don't know the answer to that, but throwing that out there. The other thing I got to say is if they split those three properties, that's 6.41 acres. Are they going to split those individually, or is that all going to be one contiguous piece and split later? Because under C2 commercial districts, they need 3 acres for C3. And for C3, it says the intent on C2 follows C3. So if those are going to be split at a later date, do they meet the 3-acre requirement? Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. My name's Rick Schock. I live at 7301 Hidden Valley Drive. I've only lived here a little over a year, so I wasn't involved in these other battles on zoning. But I will tell you that before, I lived 36 years over in Whiteford Township before I moved here. When I looked at this property, the first thing I did is come to this place and ask them what the zoning is for the property behind me. And I was assured that it was residential, single-family use. I was told that to change that would be very difficult and that I shouldn't have to worry about it. Well, here I am, a year later, looking out my back door at what could be a commercial mess. Because of the way the property lays out in Hidden Valley Drive, my back door is about 45 feet to the property line of this property. I don't like the idea of looking out my back door at the back of commercial properties where we're going to have nothing but dumpsters and semi-trailer trucks pulling in and unloading. And we've talked about traffic, but no one's talked about the businesses that we've heard that might be going in there. Every single one I've heard about is going to require semi-deliveries at least 2 to 3 times a week. And we're talking about these roads that barely handle what we've got. At times coming out of Hidden Valley Drive to turn on to Stearns Road, you'll sit for 5 minutes before there's enough opening in the traffic to get out. So if you're going to rezone this, you better really look hard at the roads and whether it can handle the traffic, because I don't think it will, and I don't think anybody here thinks it will.
Thank you.
My name is Anise Seed. I live at 7357 Hidden Valley Drive. I haven't prepared to talk, but I'm getting emotional hearing these people. Every morning I head over to Aspen Grove to be with my wife for breakfast, and it's about 10 of 8. And I see a man standing in his driveway holding his 2 little children waiting for a school bus. And I worry about them. 2 people were killed recently here. When you have all these houses and children and buses going in there, and they stop the traffic when they pick up these kids. Have you thought about the school kids and the bus situation? It's going to be bad.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If there's no one else, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Can you take roll, Mr. Steffens?
Steffen votes yes. Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Zybeck?
Yes.
Mr. Garverick?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Chairman Anger?
Yes. Motion carried.
I have a question for the developer.
Yes, Mr. Jenkins?
Both of the proposed uses on Stearns Road don't require C3. Why C3 on that?
Our understanding is that zoning it anything different than the C3 would constitute spot zoning, and that being contiguous to the C, we carried it around. There also would potentially be, for those C2 or C1 uses, additional variances required for setback where we can screen properly and obtain the proper parking and requirements and such on the 3 acres in a C3 zone for the businesses that may go there.
Oh, yeah, I understand the setbacks for C1 are almost identical to C3, so it wouldn't be a change. Or
There's a 100-foot setback requirement in the rear yard.
Rear yard.
For C2.
Okay.
Okay.
The other problem I have is the traffic. Again, I don't know when a traffic study was done last on this, probably before the widening was put forward. But it gives me heartburn to think about what additional traffic would do in this area. That's why, and I know we can't ask what uses are going to be in there. The zoning laws don't allow us to. But why wasn't this submitted as a PUD?
We had started down the PUD path, and there were many problems that came about with that. So we've, through conversation and such with the planner and engineer and staff, he'd come to the conclusion that presenting it as individual lots would accomplish a similar task for that. We still have to go through the normal steps of site plan approval. So we feel that we'll be able to achieve a similar result, just in a different fashion through the rezoning approach here. Either way, we have to rezone portions of the property, even in a PUD scenario.
Right. But what I'm saying is if the whole thing was submitted as a PUD, we'd have a clearer idea of what to expect. and also what to judge the development on. So, that's all.
Thank you.
To address the question of the parking study, we've engaged the service of a traffic consultant. We have not released them to do this because we understood that there was steps we needed to go through before, you know, if these fail, then there's no purpose in spending the $10,000 or better that it takes to achieve that study. We expect out of that study that there will be recommendations for road improvement, and we anticipate what those are, and potentially even suggestions of traffic lights between the roads to assist with that. But none of that is defined yet. We expect those to be coming in the next stages.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
We all know that your proposal here is just a proposal.
Yep.
We all know that if we rezone this parcel or recommend rezoning, you can change this all around. You can do whatever you choose to do so long as it conforms with C3. I would say to you personally, I looked at the 1977 zoning in this township, and portions of this commercial lots 1 and 2 to the east have been zoned C3 since 1977.
Correct.
So it's already C3. Fundamentally, if you came here tonight and said, I would like to add 175 feet, I'm not saying I vote for it necessarily, to the one parcel and 135 feet to the other one, you're essentially just building behind what are already commercial establishments.
That's correct.
But when you start adding another 430 feet down Stearns Road, I start to have a heartburn too. Some time ago, before the Township Board, there was an application for a liquor license. And that liquor license was allegedly for what is on here, I guess, commercial lot 2. Mr. Bates, after reading all the requirements for securing that license, dutifully walked away, and that was, on his part, I thought, a very good step. I would have presumed, and I heard at one time, that this was going to be a PUD, where this planning commission, the township board, all of the others involved in formation of a PUD would have some input as to, A, what facilities would go on here, where they would be situated, and there would be somewhat of a transition from the C3, which is already here, to something else. C1, C2, some kind of use would be permitted within the PUD. Then to multifamily, where we have another split zoning, which would have to be looked at by the Planning Commission sometime in the future. And that would be another heartburn for people. Then 21 or so single-family homes. So you're now talking about C3 to RM, or whatever you choose to do, to R2A or R3, or however you choose to do it. Again, going back to my original concept, I would not have had as much problem if you added on to the current C3 zoning. But adding another 430 feet down Stearns Road across from 8 or 7, depending on how you look at it, residential units across the street. We already know that the poor soul who lives next to Taco Bell has been trying to sell their house for a while. And I understand that when they moved in, it was C3 zoning. It was already there. The zoning was there. Poor gentleman who came up earlier said, well, I looked at the zoning and it was R2A. So I'm just saying to you, I would have had an easier time looking at, discussing, working with, adding the 175 feet and 135 feet to the existing C3 zoning. Because I understand that gives you a lot of room to put in a nice commercial establishment, splits it into 2 lots, because clearly the reason for the BZA request and waiver was to give you 100-foot frontage on SECOR Road for the parcel in the back.
Correct.
So now, we've not looked at any of these splits or combinations or anything like that. All of that will be coming forward as a site plan and other parts of this are developed. I just have a problem with the additional 430 feet. Because anything in C3 zoning, C2 zoning, C1 zoning can be placed in there. I know you're just talking about, well, here's what we plan to do. You plan to put in a strip mall or whatever. If that's all retail, you do that in C1. So that, in my view, if that's your plan going forward, then I could see C3, C1, RM, whatever, and R2A would make some sense. And a PUD would help all of us understand how that goes forward. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Garvick?
I got a question here on, you guys met with Mannequin Smith and everybody and sat down, and this was the direction that they wanted to go and stuff?
We've had conversations with all those entities, including the Road Commission and Drain Commission, and they've had input into a variety of plans that we've prepared.
And they didn't have any issues with?
The concerns that we were going to need to address, we already know, yeah, so, yeah. And we anticipate further screening, not just landscaping and tree buffering. We anticipate there's going to be some areas where we'll have physical screens as well. That's all going to need to be there. That's a part of the site plan approval process. But we've had conceptually some discussions on ways to develop this, the best way to approach it, which we do on every project.
And I guess it's my understanding, they're talking big box stores, that can't fit on 6 acres from?
It can't fit on 3 acres.
Yeah.
Each one of these is going to be a 3-acre parcel.
I know when Myers originally, they needed 18 acres at Smith and Secor.
Correct.
To even think about it, so it can't be a big box. It's impossible.
Correct. Not without the entire parcel, which
Correct.
is not the intent, and I don't believe you'd ever support that, but.
Mr. Zybeck?
I have a question for this gentleman. Your conceptual drawing has 2 entrances off of Stearns Road. Do you have any substantiation to draw this from the Road Commission? Will they permit 2 more curb cuts right there?
We've had discussions with them on it.
A firm commitment, not discussions. That's all it seems like all this conversation's been so far is we're working on it, we're talking about it. This is a nice conceptual drawing, but it's got, and I wasn't under the impression 2 weeks ago at the BZA meeting that there was any entrance to this rezoning but SECOR Road.
Just
Tonight, there's 2 more on Stearns.
Well, what was before you at ZBA was the rear commercial with its entrance. The rest of the property to access the residential needs its access, and to access the additional commercial lots, they would need their access. And until official plans, we aren't going to get an official approval from the Road Commission. But we know what their concerns are, and we feel that what we're showing would be compliant with something that would be approved by them. There may be adjustments or turn lane extensions to accommodate it as part of the final, but we're entitled to the accesses that we're showing in that arrangement, and we've had the back and forth discussions with them. It may be less. They may require less. They won't allow more.
I have to commend Mr. Frederick on his suggestions. about possibly pursuing a PUD because it offers some buffering, it offers some information for us. This is like playing the lottery. You know, your chances are 1 in a billion. We don't know. And it's hard to give you the keys to the jail and end up locking ourselves in it. So I have to agree with Mr. Frederick.
I got the idea from Dennis.
And Dennis Jenkins.
Don't blame me.
But I don't know if I have heartburn yet.
One of the considerations when we were looking at this with our client is that if we developed fully our use as it sits, that would be, based on the ordinances, upwards of 85 new homes. And we felt that it was more appropriate to bring portions of that back into a commercial use, which would present less intense traffic during peak hours of exit in the morning for work and return from work. So what we're proposing is something around half of that full developed residential aspect. So that's kind of some of the logic that John had in his vision in trying to bring some more commercial to the site and extending it down that 400 feet.
Thank you.
Mr. Frederick?
Marty, a question. The DDA has jurisdiction over, if you just look at commercial lot 1 and 2, they only have jurisdiction over about half of it. So how would that go forward with the DDA involved? I mean, I guess if I built the building on outside of the DDA, it would not be captured. If I build it inside the DDA, and I don't think they can expand the DDA without going through a whole another process again, which means all kinds of people could opt out.
Well, the DDA doesn't have any jurisdiction over the rezoning, of course. The DDA is set up to, like you say, capture incremental increases in the taxes received from the property in the DDA district. And these parcels would be partially in the DDA district and partially out. Yeah. And I've never addressed or thought about that question, but I would suppose that the DDA would get a portion of, there would have to be a breakout of the parcel to try and proportion the tax incremental value to the DDA.
Okay. One other question. Has anyone, or have you secured a Phase 1 or a Phase 2 environmental study on this property?
Yes, we've engaged those services. We've not seen the report yet.
You haven't received the report yet?
No.
Well, the only reason I ask is, of course, Mr. Saylor bought the property on the corner, and DEQ came in and dug down umpteen feet, took the dirt away, filled it back up. Yep. There was some argument when the SECOR Stearns intersection was first looked at as being expanded, that they wanted to go down, the road commission, DEQ, wanted to go down an ungodly number of feet to take the dirt out of the intersection and refill it. Of course, that took the expansion of the SECOR Stearns intersection from a few $1 million to $10 million. I would be, I'll harken back to my prior life, I'd be really careful, make sure that Phase 1 and Phase 2 was clean, because you get in the middle of that title, you eat it.
Yep. And we have advised our clients in that.
You're having it completed?
Yes.
It's part of your conditions in the purchase agreement or option agreement or whatever, I don't care.
That's correct.
And to the gentleman who said he was going to look out the back of his door and see commercial stuff, when I was first running for office several years ago, one of the complaints against me was I always wanted to see the cows on there. And 2 days later, I got a tie with cows on it. We all know that you can never expect the property to stay the way it was. It was nice to have a farm in the middle of the township, but in the end, we all knew ultimately it was going to be developed. The master plan said that. Mixed use, though, as you said, has no real definition in it. But clearly C3 to C2 to C1 is, in my view, mixed use. Because C1 has restrictions in its use, C2 has restrictions, and clearly C3 uses, principal uses with special approval, most of those would never make it. So my view is that, as I said earlier, I can understand the C3 adding on to the C3 makes some business sense. The business model works. Going another 300 or 430 feet starts to break up my idea of a business model. That's as far as I'm going to go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Stephan.
One of the challenges of this board, this body, and I think of the township in general, is to develop a well-balanced growth policy. And we do this every several years with our master plan. Anyone that's lived in this township for any amount of time, realizes that that area is designated for development. I understand the traffic concerns. I travel that way day in and day out. I think most of us do because we use a lot of the resources and businesses in that area. I guess I caution, we don't develop or put C3 north of Erie. We don't see a lot of it up there. We try to pick locations in our township to develop. We have a lot of residential growth in our township in the last several years. We've seen a lot over the last 30 years. And, at some point we have to kind of gauge and balance that commercial growth on the same side. Notwithstanding any of the concerns of the residents in that immediate area, I understand. But I hope the infrastructure, because that seems to be the biggest rub here tonight with the roads and the traffic, our township generally responds to those increases. And it might not be immediate, it might not happen the next day, but eventually we get it right as far as the traffic's concerned. So I have confidence going through if we continue to develop that area. I'm confident that the infrastructure will be supported. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Stephan. I have a question for, I think, Marty. Do we have to recommend, based on what is being proposed today, is it all being C3? Can we recommend, like Mr. Frederick said, the portion be C3 at the first part and then the other 400 be C1? Is that a possibility, or does it need to be all or nothing?
You are deliberating the application that has been presented to you as presented. If you feel uncomfortable as to what was presented, you may make a motion to recommend denial and give reasons why. And maybe the developer would pull back and want to resubmit a different plan. But that would be up to the developer.
Thank you. Just clarifying.
Question for Marty. Marty, on this rezoning, what they have here, this falls under it also on our master plan we just redone a year or so ago, what they're asking for now. This does fall under the new master plan?
It falls within the mixed-use designation of the master plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins?
I just want to clarify something. I don't have any issue with C3 zoning in the right place. I just don't feel this is the right place. Thank you.
Marty, question for you is in line with what the chairman was just asking too. Is it possible to ask for the rezoning request that Lamar described on the two already zoned C3 lots and then forego movement on the 400 feet at the time? And then we could come back with a different plan for for those areas? Or is that a modification that's not allowed?
We wanted to make it a little complicated for you.
Yeah.
I would have to, what you're asking is if your client would want to withdraw, for example, 430 feet from the application.
Correct.
Today, and what I'm thinking about is due process and notice to the public.
Yep.
If you were asking me that you wanted to add another 200 feet to the application, I would say, no, you can't do that because it wasn't advertised that way and notice wasn't served that way to the public to inform them of what's going to be considered tonight. However, if you wish to withdraw part of it, I would have to say, and I'm somewhat shooting from the hip with some of these questions, that would be consistent with the notice that was sent to everybody for this public hearing. And I don't know who out there in the public would say, time out, that's not what was published, because your request then is something less intensive than what you first proposed here. So I would say that could move forward if you made that formal change tonight.
In that vein, if that is an accepted method, to go back and research some of the concerns on the other portions for a more mixed-use approach, we'd like to proceed, if we can, with the 2 lots and withdraw the 3rd lot from the request this evening.
Would you care to have your client up here to confirm that?
Confirm that? Sure.
That is confirmed.
Thank you. The public hearing has been closed.
I guess I don't, if I can say something, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem if they want to redo that, and we go on with, if that's okay with Marty on that. And move on.
Making a proposal?
Yeah,
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept.
Except what?
You're going to make me read everything and.
It will be a request or a recommendation to the Monroe County Planning Commission and the Bedford Township trustees to either approve or deny the request for the said area that you are proposing, just to help you out.
Yeah, I make a motion for that with pulling out 430 feet and just the 2 parcels of commercial and the rest of it for the zoning, rezoning of that parcel.
I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Mr. Steffen, could you take the roll call?
Mr. Frederick, or I'm sorry, Mr. Garbrick.
Yes.
Steffen votes yes. Mr. Fritz.
Yes.
Mr. Frederick.
All right, mouthed off, yes.
Mr. Zybeck.
No.
Mr. Jenkins.
No.
Chairman Anger.
Yes. Motion carried. Next on the agenda, we have public comment. Is anyone from the public that would like to make a comment? If none, we will, any commission or staff comment. Karen?
My name is Jim Sumner. I live at 7360 Hidden Valley Drive. As I understand this, and all of us over here in the neighborhood, you just now removed that extra 430 feet. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay, and when does that come up again?
At the Monroe County, okay, Karen will explain that. I'm not sure all detail.
And the 430 feet in question here was all along Stearns Road, and we're not talking about anything else at this particular point for this particular whole idea of redevelopment here. It's just that 430, you're removing it.
Correct.
Why is it not available, or why would you not vote on the motion, or on the provision as given? Why is it okay for them to knock off 430 feet and say, okay, we're going to slide this through now? Why is that okay? As our lawyer here indicated just a few minutes ago, that in the event that there's going to be a change, you had to be voting on what it is that was presented. That wasn't presented. The 400 minus the 430 feet was not presented at all as an alternative. We weren't talking compromise here that I saw or heard. So why would the board not just vote for what is written and what was advertised, as the gentleman said? I'm looking for an answer. And there is none.
Yep. Karen, any comment?
For this project, it will now be forwarded to the Monroe County Planning Commission. They will be meeting on November 14th in Monroe, of course. And then once they make the recommendation on the rezoning, it will then be brought back to the Township Board for consideration. And I believe they are scheduled. We, as a planning department, do not set their agenda. We have to request to be placed on the agenda, but I believe we are tentatively scheduled for the December 4th meeting with the Township Board.
Thank you, Karen. With that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Adjourned.